Welcome to Reality After Show. This is Talk Villain to Me with Jonny Fairplay. My guest, how do you pronounce? Is this Lex Van Dan? What? Lex Van Dan?
Lex Vandenberg. It's Lex. Just Lex will do just fine.
Okay, peek behind the curtain, Lex. I love you. I know you. This is not a secret. Lex Vandenberg from Survivor Africa and All Stars. One of my favorite villains, according to Wikipedia. I don't know. All right. So we start the podcast with this question. We end the podcast with this question. Lex Vandenberg, are you a villain?
Well, I mean, if you trust Wikipedia and what a lot of people say, then I guess the answer would be yes. But if you were to ask me for my honest opinion, I'd say no. In fact, I mean, I'm going to say something that I know you ain't gonna like this, Jonny, okay. and it'll probably piss you off, but I stand by this. I'm gonna proclaim that you are not a villain. Now I know that you like to promote yourself as the greatest villain in reality TV show history. I've heard you a million times. It's like a script, but I think I know you better than most, and I didn't buy it from the get-go. I never thought you were a villain. I think that you and I, though, we've always known that we share a lot in common. I mean, there's a lot about us we have a lot of similarities, and I think that one of the key ones when it comes to kind of our stint on reality TV is that we certainly weren't heroes, but I would say that we were both textbook anti-heroes. And there's a this episode is probably going to become, this episode of your podcast, Talk Villain to Me, is probably going to become a Talk Anti-Hero to Me episode, because I think that most people don't really, a lot of people don't know what an anti-hero is. It's something very different than a villain, but a lot of people just they just wash over us and say, yeah, that's a villain because that guy or that girl's not a hero. And they played hardcore, that makes them a villain. And if you look up the definition of anti-hero, an anti-hero is basically the main character of a story, but they don't exhibit or possess classic or typical hero qualities. And that's us. I mean, let's be honest. In our respective seasons, we were in most every way we were the main characters, but we played pretty hard. We did things that some people would consider unsavory. Like, I mean, you had the big lie. I don't think that lying in this game, the lie that you said, I don't think that makes you a villain. I think it makes you fucking clever.
Savvy.
No, you were just exploiting and leveraging a tool that you had at your disposal, and people fell for it. And for me, people looked at me, and when I played Survivor Africa, and I had a mouth on me, and I played pretty hardcore. That was not lost on the people I played with, and they were many of the folks I played with were constantly gunning for me and trying to get rid of me, which, as I was sleep deprived and starving and dehydrated, it made me angry sometimes. And so sometimes I said, some pretty awful things. Like I talked about wanting to cut people's throats and stab them or whatever. But again, I don't think that makes us villainous. I think that makes us human beings. I think I don't think there's such a thing as a hero either. I think that that's just like, the hero is even more pure fiction than the villain. I mean, in Survivor, I'd say that like your villains, I mean, you can't deny that Hatch is pretty villainous. You absolutely can't deny that. I'm drawing a blank right now, but
Russell Hantz.
Russell Hantz for sure.
Yes.
And frankly, I mean, I would say, not because I've got a beef or a bone to pick, but I'd say that Boston Rob it definitely exhibited some true kind of villainous qualities, because anybody that can talk just awful smack about the people that they're aligned with and that they're working with behind their backs, that's just kind of crummy. But I never saw you really exhibiting truly villainous traits. I think you were an anti-hero. So that's a very long-winded way of me saying I don't think I'm a villain. I think I'm an anti-hero. You ain't buying it?
No, I'm for. I agree. I mean, I'm not gonna change the name of the podcast, but
I don't expect you to. I'm just here. I'm just here to hose your format and just screw with with the name of your podcast just during my episode.
no, I'm for it, and I agree. I think I'm more anti-hero than villain. If I had to put a label on myself,
And that's why I gravitated towards you immediately. I mean, you know that the day we met, I was like, "Fuck, you're my dude."
yeah. But are you a villain if you don't think you're a villain?
Well, I mean, I guess really, truly, the only people that could probably answer whether or not you and I are villains would be anybody but ourselves.
Oh, and I'm not
However,
talking about us. I'm just saying, in general, are you a villain if you don't like? Richard Hatch does not consider himself a villain. Jerry Manthey does not consider himself a villain.
I don't consider Jerry Manthey a villain either.
I don't either.
But I don't think that I think that it doesn't matter what you think. I don't think that. I mean, here's the thing. Like we know what our hearts are. We're the only ones that really know what's inside of our hearts. So on the one hand, you could say that, yeah, if I say I'm not a villain, and I'm being really sincere and honest, well, then that should count for something. But we don't know. Sometimes it's hard to be self-aware enough to know kind of how your behaviors and actions and thoughts affect other people. And if I've met people that were so unaware of themselves that they just ran roughshod over everybody, and they were insensitive, and they were kind of terrible people. And when you called them on it and you say you're a terrible human being, they'd say, well, what do you mean? I'm a really good dude. And you're like, no, you're not. You're kind of really mean, and you're a bully, and you're terrible. But they had no clue. So sometimes you may think that you're not a villain, but that, if you don't have self-awareness, then you have no business being the judge of whether or not you're a villain.
Okay, so let's go to Richard Hatch.
I mean, we're getting deep here, dude.
I know. I'm for it. This is what this podcast is about. Okay, so Richard Hatch. I think there's some self-awareness there, right?
Yeah, no, fully. I mean, he's about as self-aware as anybody. Here's why I would put him squarely kind of in the villain category. Richard Hatch. I mean, I love Richard Hatch, and I got to play All Stars with him, and I got to know him quite well. But Richard Hatch, and if he was being honest, which I mean, sometimes he's honest, and sometimes he ain't.
Sometimes he's not.
I've
met both versions of Richard Hatch, and I love both of them. They're both fun.
I know them both intimately. But if Richard was truly being authentically sincere and honest, he would tell you that he is an absolutely obsessive creature of ego. Ego is the fuel that runs his motor. And he used to say, or he probably still claims that, he took ego out of the equation when he played, and he was just playing with his brains. That's a bunch of horseshit. I played with him, and I know that he's incredibly egotistical.
Yes.
And he hates when, he wants everyone to know that he's the best. He invented all the stuff, and he's the greatest.
He's a genius, and he's
a genius and all those things. And I would say that I don't consider ego, or I consider ego to be it's a flaw. I think it's a personality flaw. It's something that to me is almost enough to put him in the villain category.
It's a villainous trait.
It is a villainous trait, in my opinion. I think there's a lot you can say about humility, and Richard would probably say being humble is for suckers. Like humble people never win. I don't think that's true either. I think there's something, humility is I think is a noble trait. Some people see it as a weakness. Hatch does not. He doesn't even have humility in his pinky toenail. And again, I have to say, I mean, I love Richard. I love him. I don't.
Every word we're saying is complimentary. However,
yeah,
true.
And Richard, if you ever watch this, you probably won't, but if you do, I mean, nothing other. I'm happy to talk about this with you anytime. But I do think that I think that Richard I think Richard was a villain.
So is Richard Hatch the first reality television villain?
Well, I mean, there wasn't Real World, didn't Real World predate Survivor?
I gotta check. So some people say Puck is the first villain. Some people say Richard Hatch. I feel like Hatch was first. And
No, I'd say, and Puck, I don't know that I'd call Puck a villain. I'd call him an anti-hero as well.
I'm with anti-hero on Puck, and I'm with villain on Hatch.
Well, then you and I see eye to eye.
But both of those people agree that they're not a villain. Not about each other, because I'm sure neither one know who the other person is.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, again, I think that sometimes, depending on what kind of person you are, I think sometimes you can't be trusted to make the call on that yourself.
Yeah. So because like I was away in Bolivia in February, and there's an announcement about my Bolivia whereabouts coming up, and people were asking, they're just like, are you the first reality television villain? I was like, by some accounts, yes, because Puck never considered himself a villain. Richard Hatch never considered himself a villain. Jerry Manthey never considered himself a villain. Boston Rob did not consider himself a villain. So
no, but again,
if all these things are true, then yeah, I'm the first. But I'm just I don't think I'm the first.
But again, just because you say it's so doesn't make it so. And I know you well enough to know that even before you played Survivor, you're a guy that understands the value of brand. And you decided before you went out and played the game that was going to be Jonny Fairplay's brand.
I want to be the bad guy.
Yeah, you were going to differentiate yourself and stand out and be remembered by people if you proudly owned the bad guy label. I saw right through that. I think it was horseshit. I didn't buy it. And so, but yeah, did it work for you? It was a great little marketing ploy. Sure. But it was just that. It's at the end of the day, it was kind of a gag, because your follow through on being truly a villain is shit, because you're not a villain.
Well, the only person telling the viewers at home on Pearl Island I'm a villain is me. And the only person telling the people at home that Rupert's a hero is Rupert. When in reality, we all hated Rupert.
Well, you just answered your own question. Can you be trusted to label yourself? You just gave two perfect examples from Pearl Islands why nobody can be trusted to label themselves. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I'll take that. This is why we're doing the podcast, Lex. I mean, all right. Real quick. I mean, it's topical. I got to ask, are you an Oppenheimer or a Barbie guy?
Well, right now I'm neither, because I haven't seen either one, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around the whole Barbenheimer, this Barbenheimer kind of fad. I would argue that that's probably the wrong way to. You don't want to see Barbie first and Oppenheimer second. It should be more of like an Oppenarby, because I'd want to see the sad one first and then end with the sparkly pink happy one second.
With John Cena. John Cena's not in Oppenheimer. He's in Barbie.
Yeah, well, in any event, I can't claim to even know whether I'm whether I'm Team Oppie or Team Barbie, because I haven't seen either one. So I don't know. Have you? Surely you've seen Barbie.
No,
you got a daughter.
Yeah, I am allegedly. I'm invited to a Barbie party on Saturday. My mom's throwing a Barbie party at the movie theater.
Are you dressing up?
No. Well, apparently, if I don't wear pink, I can't show up. But
do you have a pair of pink Air Jordan 1 OG high tops?
My girlfriend does that. I bought her for a Valentine's present.
Do you guys share the same shoe size?
If I did, we wouldn't be dating. No, I have a pink "I hate Jonny Fairplay" T-shirt that I'll proudly
That'll
wear.
work.
So, but no, I went and saw Oppenheimer in IMAX last night.
How was it? I heard it's amazing.
It did not need to be 2 hours and 50 minutes long.
I've heard that too. I've heard that they easily could have shaved 30 or 45 minutes off of it.
Easily.
Yeah.
And it is like I'm not no spoilers because like I could say something that I think it was the coolest part of the entire freaking movie. And so I'm not gonna spoil it. And I thought it was awesome. I mean, I thought it could not have been done any better. And the dude from Peaky Blinders, I think is an amazing.
Oh, he's one of my favorites. He's one of my favorites.
love him so much,
Yeah,
and
yep.
I think he's one of the. He could be this generation's Al Pacino or Robert.
Oh, like I would actually go so far as to say that he is heads above Pacino. Myself, I think he's a better actor.
I love him. I love him so much.
Yep.
And so I was really excited to see it. And so much of the movie, like, so, it's filmed in all IMAX cameras. And so much of the movie is just, it looks just like half the screen.
Wow.
And I'm okay with, I got no problem because that's a lot of the objections that you're, it's like you got those IMAX cameras and you're just zeroing in on someone's face. And I'm just like,
well, I mean,
great.
A good movie is a good movie, whether you watch it on a phone or in an IMAX theater. It'll hit you just as hard either way, regardless of whether the screen is this big or as big as a house.
But if you're such an amazing actor and such an amazing storyteller, like I think the two of us are, and if you can tell the story with your face,
yeah,
why not show that?
Well, of course, I totally back that 100%. Now, this is slightly tangential and not 100% related to what we're talking about right now. But I found out something. I was talking to Oppenheimer with some friends of mine, guys in a couple guys that are in a band that I'm in a band with, and one of them told me something that I did not know. And this is like such a harrowing and chilling fact. But you've heard about carbon dating, right? You know what carbon dating is? Like, scientists like archaeologists or dinosaur dudes, they dig up a bone and they can carbon date it, which means they can use carbon dating, which is a scientific method, and they can get to within, they can pretty accurately tell you exactly when that object was alive or when. So it's a fairly accurate way of dating stuff.
Yeah.
Did you know that the moment that atom bomb was detonated, the first atom bomb was detonated, every single thing from that moment forward cannot be carbon dated. Ever. Carbon dating only works for anything before like 1945.
Wow.
The effect
of the entire planet or just around that area?
The entire planet. The effect that radiation had on the planet rendered it basically destroyed the accuracy forevermore of carbon dating. Now it doesn't matter to us because right now, like, who cares? Who cares about dating shit that's only from 80 years ago, right? Yeah. However, future scientists, 200, 300, 1,000, 10,000, if man even exists any longer, sure, they're going to have to figure out another way to date shit because carbon dating is no longer on the table.
Wow.
Is that not terrifying when you think about the impact and effect that it had? Just that one explosion changed, and that's something we know about. Who knows what else it changed that we don't know about? In fact, today I heard a story about the people that were in that little town where they tested the first one. Their lives were forever ruined. Their health, everything. There has been zero amends made to them. They're still trying to get some sort of reparation to what affected them and their ancestors' lives. I don't want to get too political, but that's crazy shit, right?
That's great. Well, speaking of carbon dating, I don't know if you're aware of this, but Han Solo was frozen in carbonite.
I didn't know you were you had such a scientifical bent. I didn't know you were.
I am drinking Hazy AF. It's from BrewDog. It's a non-alcoholic New England style hazy tonight.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I'm drinking. What is this? Henninger Lager from, I think it's from Germany, and it has alcohol in it.
Oh, okay. Well, so does this Jonny Fairplay available.
There we go.
Area. So that one's not open. This one is. We're good. All right. So yes. Let's go back in time.
Hit
All
me.
right. Perception of a tattoo drummer back in, what was it, 2001? 2000? When's
I mean, we shot in early 2001. Yeah.
Okay. So shot to early 2001. Perception in the world as we know it. You can concentrate on America if you want, of a tattoo drummer in 2001, because you're not Travis Barker in 2001.
No.
No.
No. In fact, I would say that the perception part of it, the drummer part of it, had nothing to do really with anything. It was like people's eyes pulled a hard screeching halt on tattoo. That's all you needed. It was like back then it was and it's hard to imagine that now, because nowadays, prominent, successful, respected CEOs have full sleeve tattoos. It's not a weird thing anymore.
Yeah.
It's been normalized to the point that it's almost infuriating to me, because I never got tattoos to fit in. I got tattoos specifically as a rebellious act. It was like I wanted to be on the fringe. I wanted to basically wear a uniform that said, I'm nothing like most all of y'all. I'm my own person. Yeah. And the whole point of it was to be a maverick, or to be different, and to publicly declare that I wasn't part of the status quo. And now
anti-establishment is
totally question authority, question the man, all of that stuff. And now you can walk around and the man is tattooed, right? But back then it was like it was definitely, and that's where you could probably, if we're talking villain, since your podcast is Talk Villain to me, if we're talking villain right now, you can, my origin story as a villain is basically, it all boils down to the fact that I was heavily tattooed, that up until that point, the only people who had ever been on TV who were like heavily tattooed were typically people in prison or Hell's Angels or gangbangers. It was the kind of thing that back then, if you had like one or two tattoos, but if you were heavily tattooed, everyone just assumed you were a wife beater, you were a criminal, you were a drug addict, you were all the bad things. And I could be walking down the street, and I've always loved kids, but if I was walking down a typical street and somebody was walking their kids, they would go to the other side of the street, because they would just assume that I was probably a terrible person that might do something terrible. So naturally,
let's go back even before pre-Survivor.
Yeah.
Didn't you want them to walk to the other side of the street? Isn't that why you got the tattoo?
No, I didn't want to scare people. I just wanted to. It was just a public act of rebellion. It was just me wanting to be different. And I have loved. My parents will tell you they were mortified, but I've loved tattoos and tattoo culture since I was a little kid. This is like back in the 60s and 70s. I was obsessed with that stuff. And I always wanted tattoos, because to me, tattoos were they were super different. And something happened in our Western culture where that became like a thing like that. But, in a lot of other primitive cultures, it was very much a part of it was the fabric of their societies. Yeah. But for me, it was, I don't think I've ever felt, even as a kid, I never felt like I properly fit in. I was just always a misfit. I was always a misfit. In school, I was a misfit. In grade school, in high school, I never fit in anywhere. And And for me, tattoos, it was like wearing a t-shirt that was comfortable. It felt right. It was just it was like the uniform that I felt like I needed because I was a misfit, and so I was going to be a misfit. That didn't mean that I wanted to scare people. It was never like a tough guy thing for me. To me, I never equated tattoos with like, hey, tough guy or scary guy or any. It was just, I'm just a freak. I'm just a misfit, and this feels right to me. And it's a way. I'm also, you know, I've always been I've been a musician for years and years, for years before I was on Survivor, and I think the creative, soul in me, I like to think that I'm a creative person. I love art. I love music. And tattoos appealed to me as a creative. It was a way for me to express myself um, in an artistic and creative way that also, as a bonus, rubbed a lot of people kind of the wrong way and sent a signal that I was not part of the establishment. I was not somebody that was looking to fit in. I was here to just forge my own trail and make my own course and do it in a way that might break a lot of rules, but I don't believe in rules, and I believe in doing things the way I want to do them.
My next question: have you ever heard the band The Misfits?
Of course, dude.
Oh no!
Come on, that harkens back to my punk roots.
That was not a question. I was just kidding. All right. So now let's go back. 2001, tattoo drummer. You're on Survivor. Would do you recall being America's and the world's first perception of that?
I mean, I think people were properly blown away. They like, again, they had not seen anything like it.
Yeah.
The people that actually watched the show, I think, and I knew this was going to happen. It was kind of my secret weapon when I got cast. It's one of the ways that I actually got cast on the show. When I met with Burnett and Probst and Les Moonves, I said, you know what? These other 15 players are never going to see me coming. They're going to judge me on first sight. They're going to think I'm, stupid. They're going to think I'm violent. They're going to think I'm inarticulate. They're probably going to think that I'm illiterate. And I'm going to show up and I'm going to get along with everybody because I love people. And I'm happily married. I love my kids. I'm going to be the opposite of what they perceive me to be. And that's going to be like, it's going to be a wonderful little surprise. And it's going to also knock them a little bit off balance. It's going to confuse them and disable them a bit. Right. And I think that it had a similar effect on the television viewing audience globally. People, I think, made this, they immediately made one kind of, they made one judgment, and then they were like, whoa, this guy's kind of way not like what I thought he was going to be. And it's funny because I remember there was, if you remember that magazine, I don't even know if they're still around, but I think it's the Enquirer, the National Enquirer, or the Star. It was one of the tabloids. Sure. And they had, I saved it somewhere, but there was an issue while Survivor Africa was on, and it was like the full cover was me, and the headline was, Survivor's tattooed Lex is a doting father of two and a loyal husband, or something like that. Like that was a headline. Like that was a news flash. Tattooed Lex is a doting father and wonderful husband. Like that was some kind of like, whoa, that's how strong the perception was of heavily tattooed people being bad. That like a tabloid that usually reports about, space aliens,
Well, if it was Star, it would not be space aliens. If it was National Enquirer, it would definitely be space aliens or that.
These are like, these are magazines that report on like the big tabloid news of like, Brad Pitt cheating on his wife or something like that, right? And here they thought that this was news. Like this was actually big news. That who would have thunk it? This heavily tattooed guy is actually a good dad and a good husband. It was like, that was like so bizarre to me. But, conversely, something that's interesting, and this is like culturally, like it flips the whole thing on its head. But I remember when we went to Africa, the week before that we started shooting the show, we had a 1 week survival training camp. They took all 16 of us. Yeah. We couldn't talk to each other. They put us.
Most people get. I am the only person that's played 2 seasons ever that has never done Survivor camp.
Wow. Well, in Africa, it was critical that you went through this kind of training because everything out there could kill you. Everything could kill you, and so they had ex-British SAS, like basically like Navy SEAL type dudes that were ex-British, Navy SEALs that had then become mercenary soldiers in Africa. They were the ones that trained us, and they were also, it was them that trained us and a group of Maasai warriors. Okay, when we showed up at camp, these Maasai warriors, and you've seen them, they're like 7 feet tall. They've got their spears. They've got all that beautiful beaded jewelry. They've got the earlobes that hang down. They're magnificent, and they're like they're intense, and they're beautiful. And they were all kind of lined up, and they welcomed us to this camp. And I kid you not, those Maasai warriors went buck wild when they saw me. They had never seen. They hadn't seen a lot of white people, but they had never seen a tattooed person. And they came over, and they didn't even think about asking. They just grabbed my arm, and they were like rubbing my arm to see if it was like some kind of war paint or something, and if it rubbed off. And they were like,
for those of you watching at home, those are all fake. He draws them on every morning.
Every day. Yeah.
Where do you find the time, Lex?
I get up wicked early in the morning.
Wow.
No, but it was such a trip for them. They didn't find any of it off-putting or like threatening, or for them they were like, "Whoa, this is incredible! This is beautiful! This is cool, wonderful!" Yeah. They were just like really just like so curious about it. Kind of the opposite reaction from what you get, in the typical Western world. But
all right, so let's we talk about perception of the outside world. Inside the game, real quick. What's the immediate perception from your fellow players? I mean, for those of you that are not aware, Lex, Big Tom, still BFFs to this day. Lex will be at Big Tom's farm in a couple weeks. I'm going to be there with him. It's insane. Still talking with T-Bird, still talking with Ethan. I mean, you guys, like this is an incredible season. But Riley Gate.
No, oh my God, no. I mean,
your guy.
no. So here's the thing. I would be lying if I said that I also, I'm not better than anybody else. I also tend, sometimes, we're all human, but I also tend sometimes to read a book by its cover, and make inaccurate judgments or have inaccurate perceptions of people before I get to know them. Survivor is no exception to that, and I think all of us did that, because you have to understand, we're in a pressure cooker. You have literally, you get put into this game, you've got minutes to really start to figure out, okay, who are my people? I mean, you got to move fast, because especially back then in the early days, if you didn't make your relationships and alliances early, because once they were made,
probably even faster now, to be honest with you.
I don't think so, only because alliances now are completely disposable. You can make 10 different alliances in one game, right?
But you can make one quick.
Yeah, you make them quick, but then when Survivor nowadays is like, it's a date and break up over and over and over again. You date, you break up. You date, you break up.
I hate it.
Back then, if you were not early in making alliances, you missed the boat, because alliances back then, for the most part, they were forged early, but they lasted until the very end. People in the early days, that's something that's unique to old school Survivor. People honored their alliances.
Yeah.
And so you had to really start assessing people quickly. And if you were too married to your preconceptions and your prejudices, well, then you really were most likely going to miss the boat, because they also deliberately put very different people on one tribe together, so
Purpose.
that on purpose, because if they put two or three people that were like the same, like three jocks or whatever, they would immediately go boop, which is what happens in modern Survivor. They got people that look all kind of the same, but
Well,
here, on my
there's 18 or however, what it's 3 tribes. Yeah, there's 18 people that are exactly the same now.
right. So, but back in like in Africa, I mean, it was an absolute island of misfit toys freak show.
Perfect.
And the first time I ever saw Tom was back when we were in the semifinals, or I guess it would have been the finals, when we were in the DoubleTree Hotel. They had like
the name of the hotel. It's fine.
They don't do the DoubleTree anymore. They gave up on DoubleTree years ago when people started camping out in front of it.
Okay. I think they still do, but I think they just Zoom now because it's cheaper.
Probably. Yeah. But back when we did that, there were like maybe 30 or 40 of us in this hotel for like 2 or 3 weeks, and so I was taking notes on everybody. And when I first saw Big Tom, he was wearing a baseball cap that was stars and stripes, and it said beef. It just had the words beef on it.
Amen.
And I wrote notes on him in my notebook. I'm like, obviously big fat redneck. I mean, that was like
no street smarts whatsoever.
And so and when we traveled and we couldn't talk to each other, I'm like, that guy is just a fucking redneck.
Yep.
And so here's the thing though, when they dropped us into the game, I just wanted to get to know everybody, and I immediately saw right through that redneck, big fat redneck veneer, and I knew that Tom was my guy. I liked him right away. I knew that they'd put us on the same tribe so that we would want to beat the shit out of each other. Like they thought these two are never going to get along. Here's this liberal, tattooed freak from Santa Cruz, California, and here's this redneck farmer from the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, where they've never seen a gay person in their life, right? And I fucking loved Tom from the get-go. I was like, I just knew.
But you saw past that.
I saw right through.
You're like, there's something else here.
Well, I knew that. So it started off, I was like, he's got a son and a wife. He loves his family. I totally relate to that. I also knew, I watched him and I listened to him, and I knew that he was really smart. I knew that he played the dumb game. It was a put on. The whole thing was a gag. And most everyone bought it hook, line, and sinker. And it didn't hurt him that literally everybody on our tribe couldn't understand a word he said. Like for some reason, maybe it's because my parents are from Europe. They're born there, and they always had thick accents. So I've always done well hearing, understanding people when they have thick accents. And I understood every word he said. So people would look at me and say, "What did Tom say?" I'd say, "He said this." "What did Tom say?" "Well, he said this." But I also knew that he was just a brilliant manipulator who wanted people to think that he was a complete simpleton and that he was an idiot. And I knew he wasn't. And so, I made my mind up literally day one of Survivor Africa that he was going to be my alliance. I wanted him to be my alliance. And you can ask him now, like I went up to him and I said, "Hey, Tom, I'd like for you and I to be an alliance till the end." He's all, "Well, what's an alliance?" And I explained, I said, "Hey, it's a handshake agreement. You and I are loyal. We take care of each other. It's just like making a deal, right? And it's about honor." And he'll tell you now, if you ask him, he'll tell you, when I came up to him, at first it freaked him out. He's like, "Hell no." He'll tell everybody, this is like super politically incorrect, but he said, he thought he says, "That guy's a tattooed queer."
Yep.
He thought I was all the things. He thought I was tattooed. I was,
freak
degenerate. I was I was a freak. He thought I was homosexual. He thought, and I don't, all that stuff to me, I love all people. And that's why the first thing I taught him, that I tried to impart on him was, Tom, any love is good love. Any love is good love. And to this day now, he'll be the first to say any love is good love. But back then, he was like, oh my God,
Is it
the one guy on my
to him?
He says, the one guy on my tribe that I didn't want approached me. But here's the thing. Tom's really smart, and Tom heard me out. He had his ears and his mind open, and you know what? It didn't take him but a minute to think before his hand was shaking my hand, and he was true to me. And we have an alliance now that has lasted 23 years. Now, Ethan, when I approached Ethan, when Tom and I approached Ethan and said the same thing, look, we want to be in alliance with you, but you got to let us know right away. Ethan was like, no, I need time to think about this. I don't know about this. And I said, well, you've got until the sun goes down tonight. You got about 5 hours. And if you're not down with it because you're not sure about a big fat redneck and a tattooed freak, that's fine. We'll still respect you, but you don't get to be in our club. And that's that. And he walked away, and after about a couple hours, he came back and he realized, okay, I might have been stupid. Yeah, I'm in. He smartened up, but Tom was much smarter than Ethan in that regard.
Yeah. And that brigade of the three of you is just an amazing thing. And for the record, for those of you watching at home, of the villains that we've discussed this evening. So you have Lex Vandenberg, potentially Big Tom, if you want to call Big Tom a villain. I don't think anyone does, but if you want to, Jonny Fairplay and Ethan Zahn. Ethan Zahn is the biggest villain amongst the four of us.
I would not argue a second with you about that.
I don't think Ethan would as well.
I know Ethan wouldn't. I mean, Ethan.
Well, on a podcast he would, but
right.
In real life.
Yeah, for the same reason that you have your brand.
Yeah,
that's the reality TV's, the greatest villain in reality TV history. Ethan's got his brand too, and Ethan has ventures out there, profitable ventures that really rely on him being perceived as a hero figure. And yeah. God bless him. I love Ethan. He's my brother. He's got a good heart, but he wouldn't want us talking smack right now because it's off brand. It's off brand for Ethan.
But for the record, we are having the same conversation. No cameras. Ethan's just like, yeah, I'm a bigger villain than all of you. You know this.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, Ethan wins this award. All right. So you do Survivor Africa, and then you come back for Survivor All Stars. Does this make you a villain?
Well, here's where I have to, I have to admit some stuff that's going to make me look like an even bigger fool than I appeared when I played Survivor All Stars, because it's not lost on me that I went down with my decision with Rob. I went down as one of the biggest fools to ever play the game. Granted, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that.
Stuff behind the camera.
Well, yeah, but still, I'm totally willing to own that.
Sure.
Now, but I will admit something else that makes me feel like an even bigger fool. When I went and played Survivor All Stars, I had a strategy in mind before we went and played the game, and it would have been a great strategy if I could have pulled it off. And I was so convinced that I was going to pull this off that in the week, see, we didn't have survival training in All Stars. We had a week's worth of media junkets and press junkets.
Yeah.
They had all the magazines, all the TV, all the press was out there in the Pearl Islands in Panama. And for a week, they interviewed us because it was the first time they had ever had returning players on a season of Survivor. And I told every single one of them, because the first question they all asked was, what's going to be your strategy this time? How? Because the big thing was everyone that you're playing against, they all know what you did the first time.
They know your game.
So what are you going to do? How are you going to do well in this game when you've lost the element of surprise, which has been true for every other season Survivor so far. And I went in there thinking I was so clever. My whole strategy, and I worked on this. I prepped myself. I was like, you know, just I got myself just mentally as prepared as I could for it. My whole strategy was going to be, I'm going to go out there. They're all going to think that I'm this like super loyal. My word and my handshake is my bond. They saw me on Africa. I cried for my kids and my wife. And I'm going to flip the script this time, and I'm actually going to behave like the tattooed violent freak that they originally thought I was. I'm going to totally pull a reverse play on them. I'm going to make deals. I'm going to break deals. I'm going to stab people in the back. I'm going to lie. I am going to be a villain. My plan was to be the villain that for those 3 years before All Stars, the press always covered me as a villain. A lot of the fans thought I was a villain. And I said, you know what? The players that I'm playing with, they all know I'm not a villain because I knew all of them personally.
Yeah.
But I'm going to play like a villain, and it's going to catch them just as unaware as it did the first time I played when they discovered that I was actually a nice guy. So that was my plan, to go out there and just be a complete asshole, right? Deceptive and awful. And I went out there thinking day one, when we hit the beach, I was like, I'm going to do this. And every time I found myself at a fork in the road where I had to make a decision, either the villainous decision. Yeah, exactly. I realized immediately that my tendency to be a kind person, an empathetic person, I couldn't turn it off. And I realized that I'd completely cooked myself because I had told everybody, People Magazine, TV Guide, Entertainment Weekly, and it was all going to come out. And I was going to look like a fool because this thing that I said I was going to do, I couldn't pull it off. It made me physically ill to try to be a villain. I couldn't do it. I literally physically couldn't do it.
Yeah. And there's been similar scenario, like Coach went back the second time and he was just like, watch this. And it's just like, no, you can't watch this. You're you. And you trying to be what you're not doesn't work. And I consider Coach season 2 a failure. And I love Coach, one of my favorite Survivor characters in the history of the show.
Yeah,
love him. Yeah. And Tony Vlachos. When talking with him, Tony Vlachos went out his second time. What was it, Game Changers or whatever?
Yeah.
And he had in his head, he goes, Fairplay goes, I dreamed it. He goes, before I went out there, I knew the game I was going to play. I went out there and I just did all this stuff. And he goes, because I dreamed the entire thing. Because I didn't bother having a single conversation with a single person to figure out that they were in with any of this with me. like I just did. Like he goes, I saw it and I did it. And it was exactly like I saw, with zero communication to anyone or any implications of any of that had to do. And then it was just like, and I went home.
Yep.
And he was he goes, what I figured out, and he goes, and what the great players figure out, and we all do, is Survivor's a reactionary game.
Mm-hmm. And it literally, in my experience, it peels away all the layers of like fakery that we kind of armor and shield ourselves with in regular society. It literally, it carves you down. It shaves you to the bone. And what's left is like your true self. That's all you know, and it takes a few days, but once you've been starving and you've been filthy and you've been put in a situation where you have to literally fight for your life in the game,
and friendships
and everything else,
like planned and unplanned.
It's like truth serum. You cannot fake your way through that game and pretend and try to create a persona that is not you. The game will crush you until you are crying uncle. And it will force you like as if you're being waterboarded. Eventually, you are going to fess up, and you are going to be who you actually are.
And you were so peek behind the curtain. You and Boston Rob were friends going into this deal.
Big time.
Going into Austin, like big time.
Yeah.
And so all right, I want to address. We got a comment in the chat, so let's go ahead and address this. All right, so you did the same thing to Ethan that you got mad that Rob did to you. You and Rob used almost the same exact vocabulary when speaking to the counterpart. It's business, not personal.
Yeah.
Right.
So I mean, I'm really glad that someone asked that question, because this is something I often get accused of, but I'm not able to actually kind of provide my own perspective on it.
Yes.
What made that very different is that there's a couple things that made that very different. So I don't feel like I did anything. I didn't do Ethan dirty in any way in All Stars for a couple of reasons. One is he and I made absolutely no deal on All Stars. The deal we made 3 years earlier in Africa, that was for Survivor Africa. We did not make a game alliance that was going to apply to other games. It was so when we were playing in All Stars, we had
hold on,
never.
real quick before the. Also, Ethan won.
Well, that's so you're jumping ahead. So that's my second point, but I'm not quite there yet.
Okay.
I want to stress the fact that on All Stars, I never told Ethan that I would work with him, that I would protect him, that I would be loyal to him. There was no deal made. Now, with Rob and I, there was a quid pro quo in effect there, and that was, please take care of my girl, and I will take care of you. And so this
and there's a pregame deal between the two of you as well that we're working together.
We didn't make so much a deal, but we were good friends. I mean, but there was no deal with Rob ahead of the game. There was no deal. So I don't want that. I don't want anyone to get.
Well, I mean, because you're not allowed to, but if you were to.
but the truth is that that in the game of All Stars, when Rob asked me to take care of Amber, and I did, he did say, look, if you do this for me, I will take care of you. And
we saw this.
And so that's a fact. Now, the other thing, as you just mentioned a moment ago as well, is that every single one of us that went into All Stars that had not won, we had already made a deal. Because CBS and Survivor would have you think that none of us knew that we were all going to be going out there. I mean, all of us knew who everyone was going to be going out there, and a lot of us kind of talked ahead of time before we went out there. That's just the way it goes. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I don't care if CBS knows that or not, because you got to use all the tools at your disposal.
You're dumb if you don't.
And every last one of us said, okay, here's the deal: winners cannot go deep in this game. If you have a chance to shank a winner, you got to do it. All of us were in unanimous agreement that winners went home, period, end of story. So Ethan, he had his chance. He got $1 million. He partially rode piggyback on my back in Africa to that $1 million prize. And so I didn't feel the least bit of guilt not letting him win $1 million again. And here's the thing: if I'm stupid enough to work with Ethan on All Stars and he makes it to the final 2 or the final 3 and I'm in there, I deserve to lose that $1 million, because all Ethan has to say is, you know how good I am? I'm back again.
Yeah.
And I've got nothing that I can say to parry back at him. So Ethan had to go. You got your $1 million. I love you, brother, but you've got to go home. So I feel absolutely no remorse about that. But do I think it's different than what Boston Rob did to me? It's very different. What Boston Rob did to me is very different than what I did to Ethan. It's not because I want to absolve myself. I know that what I did to Ethan hurt Ethan's feelings, and I felt bad about that.
Yes.
And I honestly did, and he and I talked about it plenty afterwards. I also want to stress that, some people just can't let go of the whole Boston Rob versus Lex thing. I want everyone to know out there that I have no beef with Boston Rob. I haven't had a beef with him in almost 20 years.
And
Here's the thing.
you hung out.
Yeah, we've hung out since then. Here's the thing. Boston Rob beat me fair and square. And Boston Rob, if I'm going to be totally honest, he was a better Survivor player on All Stars than I was, because he was willing to use every tool in his chest and every weapon in his arsenal, whereas I was not. I was not willing to use friendships or relationships against somebody. And even though that's not against the rules, I couldn't do it. Now, Rob could, which makes him a better Survivor player than me. And so he deserved to win. But I still couldn't do that to this day, even though I learned through Rob that that's something that can get you far. I could never do it. I just couldn't do it.
People have asked me, they're just like, Jonny Fairplay, how do you come, like, you think you're better than Boston Rob? And I'm like, no. Like, I can't do, like, I don't have that in my heart. Like, I have friends that I love, and the deep friendships that I have are worth more than $1 million to me.
Well, yeah, for sure. And honestly, I feel like if I was offered, $1 million in exchange for each great friendship that I made from Survivor, and I've got quite a few. I mean, you're certainly one of them. Tom is certainly one of them. Ethan's certainly one of them. If I was offered $1 million a head, I still wouldn't take it. I feel that the friendships and the family bonds that I forged from that show were worth infinitely more than the cash prize. But like you said, I physically couldn't do it. That's just not, it's not in my nature,
I would like to fake a friendship with Russell and get that $1 million. Can we?
That doesn't sound like a stretch at all. I don't think any of us would have too much of a hard time with that one.
Oh my God. All right. Couple last things right before we let you go. Bad guys in reality TV. Why aren't we seeing them? And should we?
Well, absolutely. Because, I mean, honestly, you and I are labeled as villains. I would argue that we are some of the most interesting characters. I hate to use the word character, but we're some of the most interesting human beings, I think, that have been on reality TV shows. And for me, the folks that are usually labeled as villains, like, let's think about, like, my current obsession, The Challenge. People like Johnny Bananas and Wesley, Wes. And
who's that guy?
Yeah, there you go.
Never met him. Never met him.
These are the villains. Inevitably are always the most entertaining and interesting characters or interesting players on these reality shows. They are the spice. If you're happy just eating vanilla ice cream or a bologna sandwich on Wonder Bread the rest of your life, then Hero is your guy. Then you're a Hero person. Now, if you like your food spicy, if you like a good spicy taco or some Thai food or some sushi, or if you like spice and you like your senses tantalized, well, then the villains are your people. And this is where, again, I'd happily put, like, Jerry Manthey, because Jerry Manthey was infinitely more interesting than most everybody else on our season. And if all of us are going to be, let's just say we're all villains, because that's what at least America considered us, then I would argue that it doesn't get any better than villains when it comes to reality TV. It doesn't get any better.
Well, I mean, like, okay, let's say you like bologna on Wonder Bread, right?
Great. Then Ethan's your guy.
Okay, but
you can root for Ethan.
Let's say you like that. But if you don't have the spicy pad Thai beside it, how do you know that you like the Wonder Bread on the bologna Wonder Bread?
Well, that's
there to enforce. Like, it's just like, oh, I hate that guy. Well, then you must love this guy.
Well, that's the thing. That's a great point you bring up, because it's one of the things that lacks in some of the current Survivor seasons, I think, is the lack of, like, diversity and variety in the
people.
players.
If they're all millennials with disposable incomes that can walk away from their lives for 60 days with no impact whatsoever.
Yeah,
And they
so
all voted the exact same. They're the exact same person. I'm
so
sorry. I don't care what color you are.
That's the thing that made some of the old school, Survivor and reality shows super compelling, is that there was the entertainment value was because it didn't matter who you were, there was somebody for you to connect with and root for.
That's the person I hated in high school. That's the person I warned in high school.
Yeah, but my point is, there was somebody that you could totally cheer on and love, but there was also somebody that you could despise and hate. And your entertainment value, the level of entertainment you were receiving was just as dependent on the people you hated as the people you rooted for. That's what made it so emotionally kind of engaging and compelling.
Yeah.
You have to have people that you hate and people that you love, or it's boring.
The different colors, they're just like, hey, we're different because we have different colors. I'm just like, I don't want to root against a different color, and I'm not.
No, I've never hated colors.
Yeah. But they're like, this diversity is different colors. I'm like, no, diversity, like, yes, an element of it is different colors, and I want that. But I also want, a redneck, an atheist, a metalhead,
a Christian, all of them, all the things.
Doesn't care about people, and so not 18 millennials,
right,
that could disappear from work for 60 days. It's like, I get to go away and do this thing, and I'll post about it on my Instagram.
Right, but what was really interesting back in the day is that there were the people that some people hated were the very people that other people loved.
Yes,
and that's what made it.
They could identify.
That's what made it.
You're a horrible person. You can identify a horrible. It's fine. It's okay.
But it's not. It's even more than that. It was as complex. It was as complex as society is, which is to say, there are no real, like, most people are not truly bad or good. They're in different clubs and cliques, and they don't all interconnect. And so, you got like a guy like, it's easy for all of us non-millennials who have jobs to hate millennials, right? That's easy. That's low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
But when you mix it up and you've got, like you said, people from the deep South that may have certain preconceived notions about human beings, and then you've got extremely liberal people from the other end of the spectrum, or you've got old people and super young people. Well,
I want all those people together.
See, the really young people watching the show are probably going to say, God, I hate that old guy. Get that guy off. He's useless. Yeah. Whereas the older people are going to say, that old person inspires me, and that young whippersnapper needs to get out because they don't respect anybody. See, these two people are not good or bad, but they have an equal legion of fans and haters, and that's really interesting to me.
Yeah. Versus 18 of the same people
that most everyone hates
with different pigments. We got it. We understand that does not make you, for the record, Survivor and whoever else, if you think you're creating villains by doing different pigments, you're the bad guy.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there.
Yeah,
so
I hope they're not doing that. I hope they're not.
No, they are not. No one's a bad guy.
I mean, I haven't watched Survivor in like four or 5 seasons. So
you're smart.
I hope they're not
great. It's a great show. We all love it. So could you do a TV show with all villains? Is that even possible?
Yeah, because I think that most of the people that have been labeled as villains probably aren't villains, and even the ones that are, and all the other ones that wouldn't be, they're really interesting people. Hell, yes, I could.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll see if that.
And I would jump at the opportunity, probably.
Oh, all right. I'll check my social media, see what's coming up. Final question, Lex Vandenberg. Are you a villain?
Oh, here we go again. No, Johnny, I'm an anti-hero.
I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll take it. Some people change their answer.
Not me.
Okay. I didn't think you would.
I'm a 60-year-old fart. I'm set in my ways.
All right. I love it. I love it. Lex, where can everybody find you if they're looking for you on the socials?
But you can find me Waiting for Zombies is my Instagram handle. And if I'm going to plug anything, my band, The Grip Tides, we're an instrumental surf band. We just released our debut EP, so look up The Grip Tides, GRIPTIDES. We're available wherever you stream music. Check it out.
Awesome. Lex, I love you. It's no
I
secret.
love you back, brother.
And I'm going to see you in a couple weeks.
I can't wait, brother.
Oh my God. Thank you so much for doing this. Everybody, this is awesome. I love doing this. This is
Thank you for having me, and everybody out there. I love you all.
This is great. Thank you. Everybody, we'll see you next week. You never know who we're going to get, but I guarantee they're going to be a villain, or they're going to be an anti-hero, or they're going to figure out a third term that I haven't learned yet. So with that, thank you. Everybody go to JonnyFairplay.com, get yourself a cameo, buy my dream car, order a t-shirt, all that fun stuff. JonnyFairplay.com. Click the subscribe button. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your ugly ass friend. I don't even know how that works anymore. Anyway, do all those things. Thank you so much. I love you all. Until next time. Mwah.
See y'all.